Black CEO humiliated in her own hotel 9 minutes later. She fired every single staff member. The marble lobby was silent until his voice shattered it. "Get out, now!" The manager's finger cut through the air like a knife, his tone echoing against the chandelier glass. Guests froze mid-step. A bellhop dropped his eyes. Someone's phone camera tilted higher. He wasn't whispering. He wanted everyone to hear. "This hotel does not serve people like you." Ugh. And in that moment, the woman in the black t-shirt stood still. No jewelry, no logo handbag, no entourage, just calm eyes that refused to bend. She didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She let the insult hang like smoke. Behind the counter, a blonde clerk's lips curved into a polite but pleased smile. Around them, a ring of onlookers shifted, uneasy but glued. One man raised his phone, red light blinking, live streaming the humiliation as it unfolded. Another guest whispered, "Is this really happening?" His voice trembled between disbelief and fear. The manager leaned closer, jaw tight. His suit jacket pulled at the seams, his anger swelling bigger than the role he actually owned. He pointed again, louder. "Security's coming. You don't belong in this lobby." The woman's silence was heavier than his fury. Her stillness wasn't surrender, it was control. She stood as if rooted to the floor itself, letting the lobby turn into a courtroom and his words into evidence. And if you've ever been dismissed like that, you know the weight of this moment. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. A soft cough came from the corner. A young concierge, too junior to speak, looked up with wide eyes, then back down again, torn between job and conscience. Her silence said what the room already knew. This was wrong. The manager straightened, puffing his chest, certain the power was his. "You heard me. Leave before I have you dragged out." Dragged out. The phrase clanged against the marble like iron chains. Phones lifted higher. Eyes widened. But the woman didn't move. Not an inch. Her face was unreadable, her breathing even. If anything, her composure deepened the silence. It was the kind of quiet that grows unbearable because it reveals exactly who is losing control. 9 minutes from now, this entire staff would be gone. But in this moment, she gave them the rope, and they pulled it tighter around their own necks. The man's shouting still hung in the air, but the woman he tried to push out didn't move. She stood steady under the hotel's gold chandelier, a quiet figure in a plain black t-shirt and jeans. No pearls, no designer purse, no entourage trailing behind her. If you passed her on the street, you'd think she was just another traveler who booked a room. That was exactly the point. Her name was Aaliyah Moore, 42 years old, billionaire entrepreneur. The silent architect behind Moore Hospitality Group, the parent company that owned not just this hotel, but the entire chain of Horizon Grand properties across the United States. But today she chose to walk in as no one, to test her staff, to test the culture they swore was 5-star. The marble under her sneakers was polished to a mirror shine, but she'd seen marble like this before. At 24, she was told she didn't look wealthy enough to belong in a penthouse suite in Atlanta. At 29, she was accused of borrowing a corporate card when she tried to check into a boutique hotel in Los Angeles. The words were always different: fraud, mistake, policy, but the story was the same. A black woman in plain clothes must not belong. So she stopped correcting them. She stopped pleading for courtesy. She built instead. One property turned into three into 20. And now, decades later, she was here in her own lobby, listening to the same prejudice she'd faced since she was a young broker chasing her first deal. Across the counter, the blonde clerk adjusted her blazer, eyes flicking with quiet disdain. She tapped a few meaningless keys, pretending to search a system she'd already decided not to trust. Behind her, the manager loomed larger, his anger fueled not by facts but by the confidence that no one would question his word. The guests in the lobby shifted, whispering. One man in a gray coat muttered, "She gave her ID, right? Why are they still pushing?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. A young couple with luggage paused at the door, glancing between the shouting manager and the silent woman who refused to leave. Aaliyah didn't blink. Her calm was not weakness, it was strategy. She had walked into this exact storm before. Only difference now? This was her storm, her building, her staff, her rules. The manager slammed his hand on the counter. Show us another card. Something real. Until then, you're trespassing. Oh. The word trespassing bounced across the lobby like a hammer blow. Phones lifted higher. A teenager near the elevator whispered, I'm recording this. People need to see. But Aaliyah said nothing. She simply breathed, slow and steady, as if every insult was another brick in the case they were building against themselves. This wasn't her first test, but it might be the last one this staff would ever fail. The desk clerk leaned in now, her voice lower but laced with venom. Penthouse suite? With that card? Ma'am, we've seen this scam before. Her words weren't shouted, but they sliced through the lobby sharper than the manager's rage. She clicked her keyboard once, twice, then looked up with a smirk that pretended to be polite. For your safety and ours, I'll need additional verification. Perhaps a second ID? A bank statement? Gasps rippled quietly among the guests. A middle-aged woman in line whispered, but she already gave them everything. The bellhop glanced at the floor again, shifting uneasily. The manager folded his arms, seizing the stage. Lauren, document this. Call security. We don't play games with imposters. Yes, sir. The clerk Lauren pressed a button beneath the counter. A faint chime echoed overhead, subtle but undeniable. Security had been summoned. Aaliyah didn't react. She kept her hands calmly on the marble counter, her shoulders straight. The insult was expected, almost rehearsed, but others in the lobby weren't as still. A man in a checkered jacket raised his phone higher, muttering into the mic. This is Seattle, Horizon Grand Hotel. They're saying this woman doesn't belong even though she showed her ID and card. Y'all seeing this? His live feed ticked past 100 viewers in seconds. The manager leaned closer, his breath hot with arrogance. If you don't leave quietly, you'll be escorted out. That's final. The chandelier overhead shimmered like it was holding its breath. The entire lobby had shifted. Not a place of welcome, but a stage of humiliation. Every click of a phone camera was another nail sealing their mistake. Aaliyah's eyes flicked briefly to her left. A young concierge stood near a side desk, frozen. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak but didn't dare. She looked at Aaliyah, then at the manager, then back again, caught between paycheck and conscience. Lauren's smirk deepened. You can cooperate now or make this harder. Either way, security's on their way. Aaliyah's silence was like a stone dropped in water, spreading ripples the others could feel but not name. She inhaled once, slow and deliberate, as if she was letting their words carve their own evidence into the air. Then, without raising her voice, she answered, I have already provided what you asked for. If you continue, the consequences won't be mine. The clerk scoffed. The manager laughed under his breath. Guests murmured. Phones tilted higher. And in that moment, the tension wasn't just climbing, it was snapping, link by link, toward something no one in that lobby could take back. 9 minutes. That's all it would take for the scales to flip. The echo of the manager's laughter lingered, but she gave it nothing. No rebuttal, no rise. Aaliyah Moore stood in the center of the storm like she had been preparing for it all her life. She didn't cross her arms. She didn't tap her foot. She simply looked at them steady, unblinking, the kind of gaze that made silence louder than shouting. Lauren, the clerk, shifted uncomfortably but covered it with another smirk. What? No defense? No excuses? She tilted her head, waiting for a crack. None came. The manager stepped closer, voice pitched higher, trying to fill the void she left. See? Nothing to say. That's what frauds do, they hide behind silence. But his words didn't land the way he thought. Guests around the lobby exchanged glances. One man near the coffee bar muttered, She doesn't look scared. Another whispered, She looks like she's letting them hang themselves. Aaliyah inhaled slowly, her chest rising and falling with the control of someone who had carried heavier burdens than this. At 24, she had been escorted out of a boutique hotel with nothing but a suitcase and a confirmed reservation. She remembered the sting, the shame, the way her silence back then had been mistaken for weakness. She had promised herself never again, but standing here now, she realized the truth. Silence wasn't weakness. It was patience, sharpening into a blade. Phones tilted higher. The red dots of recording lights glowed across the lobby like scattered embers. The manager slammed his hand on the counter again, desperate. Security will handle this. You'll regret trying to pull a stunt here. Ugh. Still, nothing from her but calm. Her fingers rested lightly against the marble edge, nails clean, unpainted, steady, her breathing even. Her eyes locked forward. The young concierge by the side desk pressed her lips together. She wanted to speak. It showed in the way her hand gripped the edge of her podium, knuckles whitening. But she didn't. Not yet. Lauren leaned closer, lowering her voice as if to twist the knife in private. "You're embarrassing yourself. People are watching." For the first time, Aliyah tilted her head, just slightly. Her reply was soft, but it carried. "You're embarrassing this institution." The line struck like a gavel. Phones lifted higher. A hush spread over the marble floor. And still she didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't rise to their bait. She was the quietest person in the lobby, but in that quiet, the balance of power was already beginning to shift. The lobby was no longer just a lobby. It was an audience. From the far corner, a guest lifted his phone higher, speaking into the lens with a low urgency. "I'm at Horizon Grand in Seattle. They're refusing service to a woman who already gave her ID and card. This doesn't feel right." His live stream ticked past 1,000 viewers in minutes. Comments scrolled. "Typical. Stay strong, sis. Name the hotel." End. Near the elevator, a teenager whispered to his mom, "Why are they treating her like that?" The mother pressed her lips tight, pulling out her own phone. "Because they think no one will call them out. But we will." The air thickened, humming with attention. The humiliation that was supposed to isolate her was now multiplying into witness. The young concierge at the side desk shifted again, unable to stay quiet. She looked directly at the manager, then at Aliyah, her voice small but audible. "Sir, I saw her name in the system this morning, penthouse suite. Carter, no more. It was there." The manager's head snapped toward her, fury flashing. "Elena, stay out of this if you want to keep your job." Her lips trembled, but she didn't back away. Not fully. Guests turned, eyes wide. Some began to murmur, "She said it's real. She's in the system." Lauren slammed the keyboard harder, pretending to search. "There's nothing valid here. She's bluffing." But the illusion was cracking. A man in a checkered jacket raised his voice for the first time. "If she's bluffing, why are you keeping her card locked up?" His words cut across the lobby, echoed by Sophie Lynn, the travel blogger who had just hit record. Her voice rang, sharp with indignation. "I'm posting this. People need to see how you treat guests." The manager barked, "Turn that off or you'll be removed too." But his warning was drowned by the sound of murmurs rising, phones clicking, eyes narrowing. The crowd wasn't with him anymore. Aliyah still hadn't raised her voice. She stood calm, a single figure at the center, letting every outsider's courage fill the silence she had chosen. And for the first time, the manager's power felt smaller, not because he stopped shouting, but because others started speaking. The lobby's hum had turned into a steady buzz, but the manager pushed through it with his voice like a hammer. "Enough of this circus," he pointed directly at Aliyah. "You are not a guest. You are a fraud, and I will not have you disrupting my lobby." His words landed heavy. Some guests gasped, others shook their heads. Phones tilted higher. The young concierge Elena took half a step forward. "Sir, I told you. I saw her name." "Quiet!" His shout cracked like a whip, silencing her. "You're one warning away from losing your job." Lauren chimed in, emboldened. "Security's already on their way. You can either walk out now or be escorted out like a criminal." Her voice carried that smirk of someone certain she was untouchable. Aliyah's eyes didn't waver. She stood rooted, her silence still sharper than their fury. From the back, a man in a gray coat called out, "She gave you ID and a card. What more do you need?" His voice drew nods, whispers, more phones raised. But the manager doubled down. He leaned across the counter, his face flushed, veins tight at his temple. "This is my hotel, and my rules. You don't belong here." The sentence hit the room like a stone dropped into glass. "You don't belong here." A collective murmur swept the lobby. A mother clutching her child whispered, "That's not policy. That's prejudice." The words spread, echoed, replayed in whispers until the phrase itself became evidence against him. Lauren slammed the drawer shut with theatrical force, snapping the lock. "We're confiscating her card until the bank verifies it." "That's theft!" someone shouted near the luggage rack. The manager turned, his voice booming. "No, it's protection against liars." The marble floor seemed to vibrate under the clash of voices. Security's footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway, a promise of force looming closer. Through it all, Aliyah didn't move. Her stillness spoke louder than their rage. It said, "I've seen this before. and I'm not the one on trial. The lobby was no longer just a stage of humiliation, it was becoming a witness stand, and every word the staff spoke was another exhibit filed against them. 9 minutes. That's all it would take before the verdict fell. The click of heels on marble announced it before anyone spoke. Security was here. 2 guards in navy uniforms strode from the side hallway, their radios crackling faintly. The manager straightened, confidence surging back into his posture. "There," he barked, pointing at Aaliyah as if she were contraband. "Remove her. She's trespassing. She's attempting fraud." The guards slowed, scanning the scene. Phones were raised everywhere, red lights blinking, faces taut with tension. The air was so charged it felt electric. Lauren, the clerk, seized the moment. She pulled open the drawer again, held up Aaliyah's black credit card between 2 fingers, and smirked like she'd caught a thief. "This will be held for investigation. Until the bank clears it, you're not getting it back." Gasps rippled across the lobby. "You can't do that," someone shouted. "That's illegal," cried another. But Lauren's grin widened. "It's policy." She slipped the card back into the drawer, snapped the lock, and folded her arms like she'd won. The words hit Aaliyah like déjà vu. At 29, in Los Angeles, she'd watched a hotel clerk hold her ID against the light, mutter, "This doesn't look like you," and keep it for hours. Back then, she left shaking, humiliated. Today, she didn't even blink. The manager raised his voice, feeding off the tension. "Call the police," he ordered. "Report attempted fraud. Say she's refusing to leave." Lauren snatched the landline receiver, dialing fast. Her words cut sharp into the air. "Yes, this is Horizon Grand. We have a guest using stolen credentials, possibly fraudulent. Please send officers." The phrase, "stolen credentials," spread across the lobby like poison. Guests gasped. One woman clutched her handbag tighter, but another spoke up, loud and furious. "She showed you everything! You're lying!" Phones tilted higher. A teenager whispered to his live stream, "They're calling the cops on her for checking into her own hotel." The guards stepped closer. One reached for Aaliyah's bag. "Ma'am, we'll need to search your belongings." It was the breaking point, the hush before the explosion. Every guest leaned in, every phone aimed steady, every second dragging like a drumbeat. Aaliyah didn't step back, didn't raise her hands. Her voice, calm but steel-edged, cut the silence. "Touch me again, and you'll answer in court. Not mine, yours." The words froze the guard mid-motion. The manager sputtered, "She's bluffing. Remove her now." But in the eyes of the witnesses, guests, travelers, strangers with cameras, it was too late. The humiliation had peaked. The spectacle was theirs now. And 9 minutes from this moment, the very people barking orders would be out of jobs. The landline still dangled in Lauren's hand, her voice sharp as she gave the police her version of events. But the room was no longer listening to her. Every camera in the lobby had shifted toward the woman in the black t-shirt, the one who still hadn't raised her voice once. Aaliyah reached into her pocket, not rushed, not frantic, just deliberate. She pulled out her phone, pressed a single button, and lifted it to her ear. "Nia," she said, her voice steady enough to cut through the chaos. On the other end, her executive assistant answered instantly. "Yes, Miss Moore." "Begin the protocol. Log every word. Timestamp the call to police. Record the confiscation of my card." "Yes, ma'am, it's all live now. Do you want me to escalate to corporate legal?" The lobby froze. Guests exchanged glances. The guards hesitated mid-step. Lauren's smirk faltered, though she tried to keep her voice loud for the dispatcher. The manager scoffed, desperate to reclaim control. "Oh, please, what is this? Calling your friend to pretend you're important?" But the silence that followed told a different story. Aaliyah didn't respond to him. She spoke only into the phone, clear enough for every witness to hear. "They've accused me of fraud. They've locked my card. They've called the police. Document everything." "Yes, Miss Moore," Naya's voice rang through the speaker. "Internal compliance is already watching. They'll have the footage within minutes." The crowd stirred. Murmurs swelled. "Did she say compliance? This is bigger than it looks." The manager slammed his palm against the counter, his face red now, sweat beading at his temple. "You're bluffing. You're nothing but a con artist. Don't try to scare us with fancy phone calls." But one guest near the center spoke louder than before, his camera steady. "She doesn't sound like she's bluffing. She sounds like she's in charge." The guard lowered his hand from Aaliyah's bag. His eyes darted between her and the guests filming. He knew, maybe more than anyone, that the power was shifting. Aaliyah didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply adjusted her grip on the phone and repeated, calm and measured, "Document everything." And with those two words, the humiliation that had filled the lobby for the last 10 minutes began to turn, not with shouting, not with force, but with control. The air in the lobby was brittle, like glass about to crack. Security shifted on their heels, uncertain. Guests leaned closer, phones steady, waiting for whatever came next. From the phone in Aaliyah's hand, Nia's voice came through sharper, louder, no longer just for her, but for everyone within earshot. Confirming for the record, Miss Aaliyah Moore is not only a registered guest, she is the owner of Moore Hospitality Group, the parent company of Horizon Grand Hotels. This property belongs to her. The words detonated across the marble like a bomb. Gasps rose. A teenager near the elevator blurted, "Wait, she owns this place?" A woman clutching her suitcase whispered, "Oh my God." The livestream comments exploded. "Owner? They're finished. This is history." The manager froze, his face, red with fury seconds before, drained to a pale shock. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. His hand, still planted on the counter, trembled just slightly. Lauren's grip on the receiver slipped. The line to the police was still open, her voice hanging in the air like a trap she had set for herself. She scrambled, stammering, She's lying, that's not possible. She doesn't look." She cut herself off, realizing too late that her own words had betrayed her. The guards exchanged glances. Their radios buzzed faintly, but neither moved closer. One muttered under his breath, "She's the boss?" The other simply shook his head. And Aaliyah? She hadn't moved an inch. Her voice stayed calm, steady, measured. "You called me a fraud in a hotel I own. That was your mistake, not mine." Phones caught it all. The line replayed immediately on live stream captions. Fraud in a hotel she owns. The phrase became its own verdict. The young concierge, Elena, stepped forward now, her voice firmer than before. "I knew I saw her name. Penthouse suite. Executive override clearance." Her eyes burned with vindication as she turned to face the manager. "You ignored it. You ignored me." The crowd erupted, some clapping, some shouting, all bearing witness. What had been one woman's humiliation was now a collective roar of recognition. And in that roar, the balance of power shattered. The manager was no longer in charge. The clerk's smirk was gone. Security had lost their footing. Every camera in that lobby wasn't just recording anymore. They were broadcasting the fall of an entire staff, live, unedited, undeniable. The lobby erupted like a dam breaking. Gasps turned into voices, voices turned into shouts, and within seconds the Horizon Grand lobby had transformed from a place of marble stillness into a stage of reckoning. Phones hovered high above heads like a forest of glowing witnesses. The words had spread, "She owns the hotel. She's the CEO. She's the one in charge." The manager stumbled back from the counter as if the marble itself had betrayed him. Just a minute ago, he was thunder commanding, booming, pointing fingers with authority. Now his voice cracked when he tried to speak. "Shh, she's bluffing," he stammered. This is some kind of stunt." But no one believed him anymore. The guests' faces told the truth. The young mother with her child glared openly. The teenager by the elevator whispered to his live stream, "Y'all, the manager just called the owner of the hotel a fraud. You can't make this up. This is wild." His comment section exploded with fire emojis and demands to tag the press. Lauren clutched the landline, her hand shaking now. She whispered into the receiver, "No, wait. Cancel the call. It's a mistake." But the dispatcher on the other end had already hung up. She tried again, voice breaking this time. "We didn't know, Then she caught sight of 3 different phones aimed at her face and froze. The guards shifted uneasily. One of them, broad-shouldered with a neatly pressed uniform, lowered his radio slowly as if it had grown too heavy in his hand. The other cleared his throat, muttered, "This isn't what we signed up for," and stepped back. Their authority drained out of them with every second. And then Elena, the young concierge, stepped fully out from behind her desk. Her voice, quiet before, now cut like glass. "I told you her reservation was real. I told you her name was in the system. You ignored me because you wanted to." The crowd gasped again, but this time it wasn't disbelief, it was solidarity. A ripple of agreement swept through them. She's right. They ignored her. They tried to erase her. The manager whipped toward Elena, desperate for one last shred of control. You're finished here. Pack your things. You're done. But the words sounded hollow, ridiculous, because everyone knew he had no authority anymore. One man in a suit near the lounge laughed bitterly. You're firing her? She's the only one who told the truth. Applause broke out, not polite clapping, but sharp, decisive bursts. Then more joined in. Within seconds, the lobby was echoing with applause, cheers, and the relentless click of camera shutters. The manager's face turned chalk white. He looked at Lauren for backup, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. He turned to the guards, but they had already stepped back. He looked out at the crowd and saw nothing but phones recording his downfall. Alia still hadn't moved. She let the storm swirl around her, her silence more commanding than any shout could have been. On the phone, Nia's voice rang again, amplified through the speaker. Miss Moore, corporate board is online. They've seen the live stream. They're requesting your direction. Guests gasped at the clarity of the assistant's words. A woman near the front whispered, She's really the CEO. This isn't just a rumor. The teenager by the elevator nearly dropped his phone in excitement. Chat, y'all hearing this? The board's watching. The board's literally watching this live. His stream's viewer count ticked into the tens of thousands. The manager tried one last attempt, his words tumbling out fast and desperate. We didn't mean it like that. You have to understand. We were just following protocol. A man's voice cut him off from across the lobby. Protocol doesn't sound like calling the police on your own boss. Laughter rippled through the crowd, bitter but united. Someone clapped again, louder, and within seconds the applause was back, rolling like thunder, drowning out the manager's last defense. Lauren dropped the landline entirely. It clattered against the marble, echoing louder than her words ever had. She whispered, almost to herself, We're done. The guards finally lowered their hands, palms open. One even gave a small nod toward Aaliyah, a silent acknowledgement of who truly held authority here. And Elena? She stood taller than she ever had behind that desk. No longer the quiet junior employee, but the first witness to speak truth when it mattered. Her eyes met Aaliyah's, steady and resolute. The lobby had flipped. What began as humiliation had transformed into revelation. The staff who thought they could erase her were the ones disappearing, their authority collapsing in real time. And all around them, hundreds of phones captured the moment, broadcasting it to a world hungry for justice. 9 minutes. That's all it had taken to turn certainty into panic, arrogance into collapse, and silence into undeniable power. The applause hadn't died down when Aaliyah finally moved. One small step forward, a shift of her shoulders, and the entire lobby hushed. Cameras steadied. Guests leaned in. Even the guards froze mid-breath. She lifted the phone closer, her voice calm, deliberate, undeniable. Nia, patch me through to operations. Authorize system lockout for Gregory Vance, Lauren Hayes, and all staff involved in this incident, effective immediately. A beat of silence followed. Then Nia's voice returned, crisp and final. Confirmed. Credentials revoked. Processing now. At that exact moment, a sharp beep cut through the air. Gregory, the manager, glanced down at his badge as the LED light blinked red. He tapped it against the security panel behind the desk. Once, twice, nothing. His face drained. Lauren fumbled with her login at the computer. The screen flashed red. Access denied. She tried again, fingers trembling. The same result. Guests leaned forward, whispering, She really did it. She locked them out. The guards' radios crackled, a robotic voice confirming, Staff credentials revoked. Immediate compliance required. Both men exchanged glances, then slowly stepped back, not toward Aaliyah, but away from Gregory and Lauren. Aaliyah's voice carried again, low but cutting. You stole my card. You called the police on me. You humiliated me in front of my own guests. That is the last decision you'll ever make inside this hotel. Gregory stammered, words tumbling out. Miss Moore, wait. Please, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Phones caught every syllable, every drop of sweat on his brow. One man shouted, You knew exactly what you were doing. Another guest added, You treated her like a criminal, in her own lobby. Lauren's lips quivered. She turned toward Aaliyah, desperation in her eyes. We were just following protocol. Protocol doesn't involve theft, Aaliyah replied flatly. And it doesn't involve prejudice. Pack your things. You're finished here. The words hung heavier than any shout. They weren't just dismissal, they were execution. swift and irreversible. Guests erupted in cheers. Applause thundered across the marble. Phones shook with the force of clapping hands. The live streams flooded with comments, "Justice served. This is history. Silent power, loud arrogance." Elena, the young concierge, stood taller now, her voice steady as she addressed the room. Her reservation was real. Her ownership is real. Everything else you saw was discrimination. And the statement ignited another round of applause, louder than before. Gregory dropped his badge on the counter, shoulders slumping, the fight gone from him. Lauren followed, tears brimming but unshed. Both stood small against the rising tide of truth closing in around them. Aaliyah ended the call with Nia, slipped the phone into her pocket, and looked at them one final time. "You're not just out of a job, you're out of my industry, and your footage will follow you everywhere." The silence that followed was absolute. Not because the lobby was quiet, but because no one doubted she meant it. For the first time since she walked into the Horizon Grand, the lobby was completely still. The applause had faded to a hush, not because the guests were done, but because they were waiting for her. Alia Moore stood at the center, framed by marble and glass, phones circling like satellites around her. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. Her power was already undeniable. Gregory and Lauren stood pale and defeated, badges useless, authority stripped away. The guards lingered near the edges, unsure whether to stay or vanish. And Elena, steady now, stood tall beside the guests who had chosen truth over silence. Aaliyah's eyes scanned the room, sweeping across strangers who had become witnesses. Then she spoke, not loud, not hurried, but with a clarity that hit harder than any shout. "You called me a fraud. You tried to erase me, in a hotel I own. That mistake didn't cost me anything. It cost you everything." The words landed like a gavel. Phones shook as guests gasped and cheered. Livestream comments exploded. "Drop the mic. That line right there. I'm saving this clip forever." One man clapped, then another. Then the entire lobby erupted in thunderous applause. Some guests stood on chairs to film. Others shouted affirmations. "Tell them! That's justice!" Gregory tried to open his mouth, but the sound was drowned under the wave of approval that rolled through the crowd. Lauren covered her face with her hands. The guards quietly slipped toward the exit. Aaliyah didn't linger on them. She turned to Elena instead. "Thank you for telling the truth. Integrity doesn't go unnoticed. You'll be hearing from me again." Elena's eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through the storm. The crowd cheered louder at the promise because it wasn't just a defense of dignity. It was the planting of something new. Aaliyah lifted her phone once more. "Nia, close the file and send this footage to the boardroom archive. Let today stand as proof. Silence is not submission. It is strength. And when the time comes, it will speak louder than any lie." "Yes, Miss Moore," Nia's voice replied, clear for everyone to hear. The chandelier above shimmered, catching the weight of her words. The marble didn't just reflect her figure now, it seemed to reflect her authority, unshaken, absolute. Guests surged forward, not to crowd her, but to stand with her. Phones angled high, capturing the moment from every side. The teenager by the elevator shouted into his stream, "This is going viral tonight. Y'all just watched history." His comments section flooded with fire emojis, clapping hands, hearts, and the repeated line, "She owns it." Oh. Aaliyah took one final look at the staff who had tried to erase her, then at the crowd who had seen everything. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her last words cut through the roar, simple and final. "I don't need a video to prove what happened here. I am the proof, and I am the result." Silence, then an eruption, cheers, applause, the kind of noise that rattled glass and filled every corner of the lobby. And just like that, what began as humiliation ended as triumph. Not with shouting, not with begging, but with the kind of dignity that doesn't ask for permission, it commands respect. 9 minutes. That's all it had taken.